The night of February 26, 1815, was thick with anticipation. A hush fell over Portoferraio as the Inconstant prepared to set sail. Aboard was Napoleon Bonaparte, the deposed Emperor of France. He had endured 10 months of exile on Elba, but Elba was a cage and Napoleon was not meant for captivity. He yearned for France, for the roar of the crowds. His eyes, sharp and ambitious, gazed towards the French coast. The voyage was perilous, a stolen journey across a patrolled sea. Capture meant imprisonment, perhaps death. Yet Napoleon was undeterred. He had tasted glory, known the intoxication of power. A man like him does not fade into obscurity. He had gambled before and won against impossible odds. This voyage was his most audacious gamble yet. He was determined to reclaim his throne, to rise again. He was Napoleon, and he would not be denied. Exiled to Elba after his abdication in 1814, Napoleon had been granted sovereignty over this sliver of an island. He was given the title of Emperor of Elba, a bitter mockery of his former grandeur. He was a caged lion pacing the confines of his small domain, his spirit chafing against the enforced inactivity. But Napoleon was not one to be cowed by circumstances. He threw himself into the governance of Elba, reorganizing the island's administration, improving its infrastructure, and even creating a small army. Yet his gaze often drifted northwards across the water to France. News from his homeland was a source of both anger and opportunity. King Louis XVIII, restored to the throne by the Allied powers, was proving deeply unpopular. The Bourbon king, with his absolutist tendencies and disregard for the reforms of the Revolution, seemed a pale imitation of the dynamic emperor who had led France to glory. The French people, accustomed to Napoleon's charisma and military triumphs, grew increasingly disenchanted with the new regime. Murmurs of discontent reached Napoleon in his island exile, fueling his ambition and fanning the flames of his desire for a triumphant return. For 10 long months, Napoleon had meticulously plotted his return. He established a network of loyal supporters, both within France and among his exiled comrades. He closely followed the political developments in Paris, gauging the mood of the people and the weakness of the monarchy. With each passing day, he became more convinced that the time was ripe for his return. He would land in France, not as a conqueror, but as a liberator, welcomed by a nation yearning for his leadership. On that fateful night in February, his plan was set in motion. Accompanied by a small but devoted force of 600 men, Napoleon boarded the Inconstant. They were veterans, seasoned soldiers who had fought by his side in countless battles, their loyalty to their emperor unwavering. They were the vanguard of his audacious gamble, the first wave of what he hoped would become a tidal wave of support. As the Inconstant slipped its moorings and set sail, a thrill of anticipation ran through the ranks of the soldiers. They were embarking on a perilous adventure, but they were led by Napoleon, and that, they believed, made all the difference. Section 4. A Triumphant Return. Napoleon's landing on the French coast on March 1, 1815 was the beginning of a triumphant march that would become legendary. He had chosen his landing site carefully, avoiding the royalist strongholds and aiming for the region where he believed support for him remained strongest. His gamble paid off. As news of his arrival spread, crowds flocked to greet him, hailing him as their emperor, their savior. His journey towards Paris was a carefully orchestrated display of charisma and strategic brilliance. He issued proclamations promising peace and reconciliation, appealing to the French people over the heads of the Bourbon king and his allies. He bypassed major cities, knowing that armed resistance would be futile at this stage. Instead, he focused on winning over the hearts and minds of the people, and in this, he was masterful. Each day, his ranks swelled, as soldiers sent to arrest him instead rallied to his banner. His journey was not just a military campaign, it was a triumphal procession, a testament to the enduring power of his legend. Section 5. The 100 Days and Waterloo. The culmination of Napoleon's audacious return was his bloodless entry into Paris on March 20, 1815. Louis XVIII, abandoned by his troops and deserted by his courtiers, had already fled. Napoleon was once again master of France. His reign, however, was destined to be short-lived. The Allied powers, alarmed by his return, declared him an outlaw and mobilized their armies. The 100 Days, as this brief period is known, would culminate in the Battle of Waterloo on June 18, 1815. Waterloo was a crushing defeat for Napoleon, marking the end of his reign and his ambitions. He was exiled once more, this time to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic. There, far from the battlefields and the adulation of crowds, Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who had once ruled Europe, spent the last 6 years of his life in bitter reflection. His escape from Elba, though ultimately a failure, remains an epic tale of daring and ambition, a testament to the indomitable spirit of one of history's most extraordinary figures.